Today we're going to talk about part 2 of the Shiny Happy People Duggar Family Secrets documentary. I already did a video about this where I was going over the things that I found to be the most notable about Jill's portion of Shiny Happy People, like the scenes that she was in and things that just stood out to me. So if you guys would like to check that out, I'll have it linked down below. Today we're going to be talking about some things that came out in this documentary that are much darker. Honestly, this stuff had me in tears. I had to pause the documentary. I couldn't keep watching it. I had to take a little break. I have a 1-year-old son, and even prior to having a child, I still had so much empathy for children. But having a kid, things just hit so much harder. When I heard some of the things in this documentary that parents did to their children, I couldn't listen to it all at once is what I'm trying to say. I had to take a step back, so I'm just going to prepare you guys right now. If you did not watch the documentary, I'm going to be talking about some very hard things in this video, and if you have been somebody who was in IBLP or know somebody who was, or maybe if you've dug deeper into it than I have, maybe you already knew some of this stuff, okay? But I didn't. So for me, hearing this was the first time that I heard it. I can't understand how somebody could do this to their child, let alone their babies. It's so sick. It's so sick and it's so twisted. And like when I thought IBLP and the Duggar family couldn't get any worse, they got worse when I watched episode 2. There's this portion in Michelle Duggar's book where she talks about blanket training. And if you just read that, you may not know like what exactly that means. But in this documentary, it explained it a little bit more thoroughly what it means to blanket train your baby. Basically, they would take their baby as young as 6 months old and they would lay them on a blanket with something that they really wanted next to them, like a toy or, you know, maybe a passy or just anything that your baby's going to try and reach to. And every time their baby would reach to this toy, they would hit them. They would physically abuse them because they were reaching to something that they really want in order to break their spirit.
A little psychological terror is sometimes more effective than pain. The rules, the principles, techniques for training an animal and a human are the same.
The goal is to help you spank your child with extreme measures and not get in trouble with the police.
The rod of reproof. When a child sees this neutral object coming out of the drawer or whatever, it becomes like a policeman.
You see it in essence being rods.
And they called it encouragement. They literally said, you need to come into the room and we need to give you some encouragement. Do you need encouragement? And you need encouragement.
There was a particular style of child training called blanket training.
You put the kid on a blanket, probably 6-month-old, and you put something they want just outside of reach off the blanket. And when they go to reach for it, you hit them. If they continue to reach for it, you hit them again.
Blanket training was also covered in Michelle Duggar's book.
I would focus on blanket training, calling out, okay boys, it's blanket time. We're gonna practice obey mama. Sit really still, no wiggles, be still. Say it again.
And disobedient to initial prompting of God's parent.
I don't personally believe in heaven and hell. If there was such thing as hell, or those are the kind of people that are gonna go there, okay? Them. So Michelle Duggar has talked about this form of blanket training, meaning she did this to her babies. She did this to her kids. I'm going to read you guys the full portion about blanket training in Michelle Duggar's book because the documentary only showed a little bit of it. She says, here's how I blanket trained the twins about 10 years ago and for the most part how I still do it today. To begin this training, I spread out their blankets and excitedly told the boys, guess what? It's blanket time. We're going to have blanket time. Oh boy, won't this be fun. Of course, the twins had no idea what I was talking about, but they could tell by my voice and my words that it was going to be something good. I still express that attitude when declaring blanket time, even though it's old hat to everyone but the youngest. At first, I just set them on their blankets with nothing to do but look at me and listen to my voice. They sat on their blankets while I sat on a chair within reach of them, telling them what good boys they were to stay on their blankets. Tried to get off the blanket, I instantly corrected them. When 5 minutes were up, the first blanket time training session was over and we folded up the blankets and went on with our day. The next step was adding the toy. In a little basket, I collected some special things I knew the twins would love to play with. Then when I cheerfully announced it was blanket time, I let each boy pick one toy from the basket. This was some appealing toy or puzzle they got to play with only during blanket time. At first, my goal was simply to have them sit on their blankets and play with their toy for 5 minutes. If they made a loud noise or tried to crawl off the blanket, I would correct them. Oh no, we don't get off the blanket during blanket time. This is blanket time. We're learning to have fun while we sit quietly on our blanket. Parents have to decide what type of correction works best with their children, depending on their own personal parenting philosophy. Whatever it is should be momentarily unpleasant. I didn't raise my voice, but with each correction, I became sterner and less playful. And when the 5 minutes were up, we celebrated with lots of hugs and kisses, maybe marching around the room to burn off some of that saved up energy. I praised them excitedly, and they strutted around as thrilled by their accomplishment as if they won an Olympic gold medal. Throughout the day, when I knew I would have 5 minutes or more of uninterrupted time, I would focus on blanket training, calling out, "Okay, boys, it's blanket time. Oh, isn't this fun? Come pick a toy so we can have blanket time." Some days we might practice blanket time 3 or 4 times. Other days we only got it in once. Gradually, it became a common practice. The boys learned to spread out their blankets, then they eagerly chose a special toy to play with. Gradually, I increased the duration of blanket time, praising them for sitting quietly and playing with their toy on the blanket and correcting them when they tried to get off. If they threw the toy off the blanket, they weren't allowed to get off the blanket to go get it back. As a result, they learned not to throw their toys. As the blanket training continued over several days, I would walk around the corner out of their sight, but still able to peek around and see them. If one of them made a loud noise or got off the blanket, I would come flying in with a stern word and a quick correction. I didn't raise my voice and I didn't sound angry, but it was obvious that crawling off the blanket or making noise wasn't allowed. Meanwhile, the other twin, the one that hadn't made the noise or crawled off the blanket, was watching what was happening to his brother, thinking, "Oh, I don't want that to happen to me, so I'm gonna sit here on my blanket and play with my toy and be quiet." There were some rules we had to figure out as we went along. For instance, they had to sit on their blanket. They couldn't stand or kneel or twist themselves into a pretzel shape. Gradually, they learned the self-control of sitting quietly, and when they did, I praised them enthusiastically. I noticed how in this book that she didn't describe fully the way that she would correct them, but she was very clear in saying that whatever she would do, that other child definitely did not want that to happen to them. We all know what that was, but her not including that she was hitting them in her book tells me that she knows that it's wrong. And something else to mention that's so messed up, it wasn't just that they weren't allowed to get off the blanket. They had to sit on it in a specific way. What is the purpose of this other than control and an excuse to be abusive? Because you know that a kid, a baby especially, is not going to be able to just sit still on a blanket. It's like, let me set them up for failure so that I can hit them. Anybody who's ever left me a comment saying to have sympathy or a little bit of compassion to the parents, this is why you shouldn't. This is sick. This is not normal. You will find some of the most abusive and dangerous people hiding behind religion. And the reason why they do this is because they can. Is because it's so easy to hit your kid and then be in religion, because you can pull this verse that says it's okay to do it, or you can have this pastor that tells you it's okay to do it. In IBLP, they literally had a man up there showing you how to spank your child with a rod. They asked for a volunteer, a little boy, to come up there to show parents how to spank their kid. And this old man is pretending to spank this child and basically trying to get the type of reaction from him that he wants. Like, if you're crying while you're getting spanked, well, then you need to keep getting spanked more until your spirit is broken. There was a woman on there who said she would just spank her 18-month-old all day long. All day long.
Our 8th-born just resisted every bit of training I tried to give him. And when he was about 14 months old, I just didn't know what to do with him, and he was really shaming his mother, and I would spank that child all day long.
How could this many adults sit in a room and listen to this shit and be like, yeah, I'm gonna do that to my kids? Like, what is wrong with you? I will be the first one to tell you that if you do anything like anything I just mentioned, there's something wrong with you, because that is not normal. That is not how you teach a child. That is not how you teach a baby. I have a 1-year-old. He turned a year old on May 17th. It's my job to teach him what is right and what is wrong. I don't think anybody's teaching anybody anything by hitting them. Can you imagine if adults taught each other this way? If we just walked around and we just hit another adult every time they did something we didn't like, or if we thought we needed to teach them something? You need to learn how to use your words, and you need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn how to speak to your you're a child. You're gonna have a much smarter, intelligent child who grows up way better off if you learn how to speak to them, if you learn how to communicate to them what they're doing wrong. And it may not seem like they're listening all the time, and it's probably gonna get frustrating, but I feel like spanking and hitting your kid is an easy way out. It's because you're frustrated and you're pushed to a breaking point, and it made you feel better to do that, because all you're gonna end up with after that is a child that's crying, and then you're gonna be like that lady on IBLP who's like, I'm just gonna spank my 18-month-old all day long to break their spirit. It is abusive and it is sick. That's not how you treat children and babies that are looking to you for comfort, that are going through all of these emotions and trying to learn how to be a child, trying to learn how to be a little human, and you're teaching them that. I feel awful for these kids, and the documentary really showed how this type of stuff is still going on to this day. They just are doing it a little bit differently. Bill Gothard trained all of these adults in this cult on how to behave, on how to treat their families and their children, on how to be wives and husbands. And then just because he's not a part of it anymore doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There's probably some very well-trained person who just took his place and is getting up there saying the same stuff that Bill would. And they're still using the wisdom booklet. They're still using everything that's in the ATI curriculum. They're just doing it a little bit differently. Just have it a little bit more hush-hush. They've taken things off their website and they're doing it a little bit more privately, even more cult-like, to be honest. And it also showed how Jim Bob Duggar is honestly the perfect person to be somebody to step in and for Bill Gothard, which he didn't, but he is the perfect person to do that. He's somebody that when you listen to him, you're like, oh, he just seems like a goofy dude. He wanted to get on this show and get on TLC and get on TV to brainwash people. He thought he was doing something for IBLP and for their cult by getting on there and spreading this message on TLC to everybody watching. Like, he thought he was spreading his ministry. That's why he did the show. Well, one of the reasons why. The other reason why was to become a millionaire, which he successfully did. And then the documentary, in it, they said that he's made comments before that I have my kids so trained that I could have cameras here all day long and you're never gonna see anything bad because they're so trained. Let me give you guys a little bit of context in case you're new here. I'm from the same area that they live in. I've seen them on numerous occasions for years and years and years. In order to go to one of the little areas that we'd always go to, I had to go right past where that place is that Josh got caught looking at CP. Had to go past that. We live like really close to them. I used to watch the show because I knew who they were. I knew of them from being in the same area. I've seen them numerous occasions. I never met them personally, but I knew of them. Like, they were kind of known around here even before TV as like that family with all the kids. So I knew of them, and they've been in politics and stuff like that. So I knew of them. So when they were on TV, I would watch because it was really fascinating to me. A family from my area, which isn't a very big area at all, it was very fascinating for me to watch them and see their family. And sometimes on the show I'd see a familiar place, like, oh, I've eaten there, oh, I've been there, or all the places they've been proposed to at, like, I've been to those places, I know exactly where those places are. And so it was interesting to see the same, you know, things that I grew up being around. So back when I would watch the show, I thought everything was very weird, but I didn't think that there was like abuse going on. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think there was dark stuff going on. I just thought this is a really strict family and maybe, you know, there's some sort of emotional abuse going on, but I didn't think anything apart from that. But I'm not going to make any accusations here. The documentary didn't make accusations, but it did kind of hint towards, you know, there's only one way to get your kids to sit there so perfectly calm and well behaved. Having all these kids, all these different ages, sitting there quietly playing a violin and everybody acting just so. It makes you wonder how they got there. You know, Michelle Duggar's voice drives everybody crazy. Nobody can stand her voice, and it's because it's fake. Now listen, if somebody's known her at some point and she's always talked like that, feel free to leave me a comment down below because I don't know for sure, but I'm willing to bet she hasn't always talked like that. And you know, we've seen that in this clip that Derek was filming where she was yelling at one of the kids. Clips of her where she's talking about how she has anger issues and things like that. So I think her using that voice is her trying really hard to not be the angry person that she is. And I'm sure that when she's sitting there hitting her kids doing the blanket training, or when they're in those sermons where they're teaching them how to spank their kids, can't help but wonder what those kids are going through still. There's still minors in that house. It's so sad. I don't know how this family's gotten away with the things that they did, but I'll tell you what, they have zero accountability for it. And they probably think that Satan is out to get them. And that's why all of us are saying all these things. They probably think that there's something wrong with us. They don't see there's anything wrong with anything that they're doing. They put out a statement, and this statement was so, I'm not gonna take accountability for anything. Like, I'm totally fine. It's you guys. Like, they took zero accountability for anything. And if some of these accusations were inaccurate, why didn't they deny them? Why didn't they deny them? Why didn't they say, no, that's not what we do? Why didn't they? Jill and Ginger are the only two that have come out and spoke out against them and spoke out against, you know, the way that they were raised. It just makes you wonder, like, is everybody else okay? I'm sure it's a dark place in that house and they're trying to act like it's not. Like, they think it's like it's like a heavenly, wonderful place here. I really doubt they're so happy behind closed doors. I really doubt they are. To know that not that far from where I am right now, there's kids that are having to do their parents' laundry and having to cook all the food and going through a curriculum that literally teaches you to circle like what outfit is slutty on this woman. They're not being taught things they actually need to know. They're being taught a bunch of crap. And I also want to say this, like in IBL, in a lot of religion, honestly, the obsession with sexual things, like they don't know how to handle normal thoughts and feelings that you have. And it is so perverted and gross and weird to me that it's like, in kids' school, like, hey, let's talk about sex, and then be like, oh, but don't think about that. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, can you imagine if like in your school, if like you sat down and it was like, let's talk about like slut shaming and all that all day long? Like, surely this entire cult wasn't created for Bill Gothard to assault women. You know, they talk about how he would have people come into his office to like pray with them and the types of things that he would do in there. You can't help but wonder if everything that he taught was so that he could do that stuff. He didn't want a wife. He wanted those really young girls that had the hair that he wanted, that had the look that he liked, to come in that room so he could do these things to them. And because of the statute of limitations, he got away with it and acts like it's a victory. And then he teaches all the other men that are listening to him how to brainwash. It's so sick. The things I talked about in this, I'm so surprised I didn't cry, because whenever I was watching the documentary, I was in tears. Like, this stuff is tough and it hurts. But we need to be aware this is still going on, and it's not just IBLP. It's not. Like, I grew up in a church where there are things that went on that I feel were not okay. But I can definitely relate with some things, and it's tough. It's really hard to listen to. So just know that if you've ever gone through anything like what was mentioned in these documentaries, you are not alone. You guys are gonna have to let me know what you think in the comments down below. I am sure this video lost ads, because what in the world? Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want more Duggar content or IBLP content or things on cults, give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you are not yet subscribed, and I will be seeing you guys soon for another video.